Hey everybody, and thank you for coming and joining my Fantasy Cruncher tutorial. I've got a few people in our premium Slack chat that have asked me some questions. Didn't maybe ask me to do this, but asked me some questions, and I felt like since it's our first week back and prize pools are just massive, that I figured we would give you a little tutorial here. And then, of course, if you have any questions on the tutorial, Ben, Rouslin, and I are going to be live before lock at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. Going to have a quick segment on Fantasy Cruncher as well. So be sure to come there, ask the questions then, or what have you. So let's jump right in as I'm going to go. If you haven't checked out my model breakdown part one, go check it out now, as a lot of the stuff or some of the stuff that I'll cover here, it was in that. So, all right. We have, this is my combined models for Fantasy Cruncher, where I mentioned in my model breakdown that I use my base model, the make your own model rank, and the Awesemo projections, and I combine them. Now, for Fantasy Cruncher, you have to have the two columns right next to each other, so that's why I've moved those columns over here. Now, I'm going to head over to Fantasy Cruncher. I'm going to upload the data. So all I did was copy-paste, and now I'm doing another simple copy-paste. So as you can see there, I'm going to press upload projections, and it looks like all of them came out. So now I go see, and sure enough, they are all there. All right, so one of the first things I will do is I'm going to now go and I'm going to apply exposure, a 10% to everybody. That's the way I start off. The reason why I start that off is because I have specific golfers that I'm trying to get at specific ownership percentages. If I leave it at 100, it's going to take the highest valued ranked guy, which is Abraham Answer, and it's going to give him 100% if I didn't change this. Max Homa, Byung Hanan, so on and so forth. Okay, so that's why I don't do that. We're going to sort by my projection again here. Okay, so I start off with 10%. Another reason why I start off with 10% is because if I'm going through my lineups and I pick out all my guys and I get the exposure to who I want, but I still need more exposure to fill out my lineups, I actually want the highest value rated guys to get in there as much, especially if I may have overlooked them in my analysis, or if I simply don't want to play them in the manual lineups that I make. I know that Fantasy Cruncher is going to give them to me. Okay, so now let's go through my advanced option settings. Number one, advanced options. Team salary. I will normally put in here a minimum salary of $49,200. In golf, it's been my opinion, especially in weeks where the field is this strong, that you really don't want to leave too much salary on the table. I know that that'll help you get uniqueness and all that, but I like to get uniqueness in other ways. I'll talk about that in a second here. Okay, I use random. I always have, I always will. Reason why I do is because I like to have a bigger player field than most. I'll start the randomness at 25%. I'll change it to all players. If when I run it, I find that I am not getting enough players in my player pool, I'll change it to 35. I'll change it to 45. In fact, sometimes I'll even change it to 100% if I find that my player pool is not big enough. Okay, so the unique players per lineup, get a lot of questions on that. How many players must be different in your batch of lineup? Default is 1, which means every lineup must have at least one unique or different player. I actually don't change this. I never have. I just don't find that I need to because of the parameters that I end up giving. Okay, the next one is I always put this rule in. This is a very important rule. You go up to My Data. If you didn't see that, you go to My Data. This is where I don't care about using all my salary. This is exactly why. Okay, I'm going to go to Projected Ownership. I'm going to allow a maximum of 80% in a lineup. Okay, that's very important. I have found in my research, and of course, if you haven't seen some of that research, I put it out earlier this week, the DraftKings Millionaire Maker Preview. Most lineups have under an average of 75% total ownership. Okay, so I can show that going forward. Okay, so now I've put in some of my parameters, and what I'll do is I'm going to calculate using my projections. Okay, the only thing is I'm going to change this back to 40% just because I'm not going through right now and putting all of the exact exposure that I want. So 40% should be able to give us plenty of lineups. Okay, so here you can see it's generating lineups. I put in the parameters. Don't give me ownership over a certain percentage. Give me 49,200 as the least amount of salary. How I check that is I have to go that little gear Okay, that little gear will allow me to then go and do the projected ownership, which is part of the pro package. And then you have to save it. You can't just click it. You have to save it. Okay, so I've clicked it. I've saved it. Now you can see the total ownership, 59.25, even though, let's find one that's 50,000. Okay, so 50,000 here has an ownership of 61.58. So you can tell that I have kind of determined that because the ownership can't go above 80%, you're going to find that unique problem that or I shouldn't say problem, the unique question that I get so much, I don't ever change because of the other parameters that I'm setting here. So again, I'm going to run through. I don't change the unique player settings because I'm putting a team salary of 49.2. I'm adding in randomness, which again, if you need that, it'll come up. It's the lineup making is more random. And then I go into my data and I use using pro ownership, each lineup must have a maximum total of 80%. That's how I make sure that my lineups are mostly unique. That's also how I'll make sure, as you can see, sorry, I will go back into my crunches here, which is just scrolling down the page. This gave me 43 players, which actually is right around the mark that I normally use. So 43 to 50, somewhere in that range. So as you can see, I've gotten used to my settings. I know what settings I'm looking for in terms of the lineups that I'm looking to make. This definitely gives it to me. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to get the exposure of the players that I want every time. For example, 13% more Rory McIlroy. I actually probably want more like 25% this week. John Rahm, 16%. I might only want 10 this week. I can go down to one where I don't have anybody. Brooks Koepka. Well, you guys know me and Brooks Koepka, and well, I guess if you don't, I might not have any Brooks Koepka. I like to let him beat me because I'm a sick guy like that. Even going down to Jordan Spieth, 1%. Everybody in the world, I feel like, knows by this point, I'm going to have much more than 1% of Jordan Spieth. So there's a couple ways to now get Jordan Spieth in the lineup. Maybe not every lineup, but in the lineup. One of the things that I can do to make sure that I get Jordan Spieth in the amount of lineups that I want to is I can change his default score to change his value rating over here. So if his default projection is 60, I can bump it up to 75, which gives him a 9.4 value, which is the highest value on the board. Guaranteed to get him, second highest. Abraham Answer at 9.8 is still high. Jordan Spieth, 9.4. So as you can see, now he'll get in. If I ran another 150 lineups, he'd get in at exactly 40%, just like Abraham Answer did. Couple of other ways that I can do that is I can go into advanced options and use groups. And I can say, okay, create new group. I want to make sure that I have Jordan Spieth and or let's just say Rory McIlroy must use at least one player out of these two in every lineup. So that's just another way that I can make sure that I get the guys in there. Now, sometimes when you use groups, though, however, for example, this one, Spieth and McIlroy, I only have their total exposure of 80%. So if my group is telling it to pick at least one of those two guys in every lineup, the most I'm going to get lineups made is 80% of the lineups of 150. So, or of however many I'm making. And as you can see here, sorry, my support assist is back. Apologize there. We're going to just minus this real quick. Sorry, as you can see with Spieth and McIlroy, you can make 150 lineups. So let's just go and I'll show you exactly what I mean here. We're not going to make 150 this time. We're going to make 40. We're going to calculate. So remember, this must have Jordan Spieth or Rory McIlroy in every lineup. And as you can see here, it ran into a problem. Because I specifically said, give me Spieth and give me McIlroy in every lineup and don't have the ownership go above 80%. It confines it. So as you can see, I'm going to need to go add more players in there. I'm going to need to add a higher exposure. For example, if I did an exposure of Jordan Spieth at 100 and I did McIlroy at 100, you'll see that significantly change. So I go to McIlroy 100. Now I go to calculate the 40 lineups. And now it's going to give me Spieth and or McIlroy in all of the lineups that I want it. or it's going to give me one of the two, I should say, in all 40. So that's how to change the parameter. If you're running into a problem when you use groups and the rules that I specifically talked about, it's likely because of this reason here that you're just not giving as much exposure as you should be. So hopefully that gives you a good fantasy cruncher tutorial on how I build my lineups. Of course, if there's something that I don't like or a player I don't like, it's nice and easy to not lock them in, but switch them. Just by pressing that button and going to Abraham Answer or whomever it may be. Of course, if you have more questions on this, I will be available most of the day today. I will be working. I've got my son in the afternoon before the Live Before Lock show, so if I'm gone for a couple hours, that's why. But prior to the Live Before Lock show, I will be in the Slack chat channel. And then, of course, we're going to be doing another segment on this on the actual show. So if I went too fast or if you have questions, that'll be the perfect time to do it. Till then, everybody, though, thanks for joining and hope to see you on the other side. Cheers.